Kwaku, ex-husband of Amina, invited her to his wedding to humiliate her, but she came with twins and shocked him. Kwaku, once gentle and adoring, had become a storm. He was a man others envied, tall, handsome, wealthy. His name carried weight in business circles. But in his home, his wealth could not buy patience, nor could his pride accept silence where a child's cry should have been. 5 years of marriage, and her home remained silent. No giggles of children, no scattered toys, no tiny footsteps pattering across the polished floor. Each year that passed added another stone to her chest. In the first year, she had laughed when neighbors asked when the first baby would come. In the second year, she had blushed, looking away shyly. By the third, her smile was forced, her excuses rehearsed. By the fifth, she no longer answered questions at all. "You are barren, Amina." His words cut sharper than any knife. "What kind of wife are you if you cannot give me a son?" He said it often, sometimes in anger, sometimes in cold disdain, sometimes with a sneer that told her he believed it with every bone in his body. Amina never fought back. She only lowered her gaze, her heart cracking a little more each time. At night, when he had gone to bed, she would sit on the kitchen stool, stirring soup long after it was ready, her tears falling into the pot. The steam would blur her vision, and she would let herself weep there, where no one could hear. Yet she did not give up hope. She visited hospitals, endured endless tests, swallowed bitter medicine. Each time the doctors told her the same thing: "You are healthy, you are fertile." She would clutch the reports tightly, almost desperately, carrying them home like proof of her innocence. But the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Her womb remained empty. One afternoon, she sat under the old baobab tree with her childhood friend Mariam. She could no longer hold back the flood inside her. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered. Mariam took her hand firmly. "No, Amina. Do not curse yourself. You have done everything right. Listen to me. You must ask Kwaku to take a fertility test. Sometimes it is not the woman. Sometimes it is the man." The words struck Amina like thunder. It had never occurred to her that Kwaku might be the reason. In her world, men were never questioned, never doubted. To suggest such a thing was dangerous. But Mariam's eyes were steady, her voice calm. For the first time in years, Amina felt a flicker of courage. That night, after dinner, she gathered all her strength. Her hands shook as she placed the plates aside and sat across from her husband. "Kwaku," she began softly, "I have visited many doctors. They all say I am fertile. Perhaps you could take a test too. Only then can we know how to proceed together. Maybe there is treatment we can follow, side by side." For a brief moment, she thought she saw understanding in his eyes, but it vanished like smoke in the wind. His face darkened, his jaw tightened, and his fist slammed against the table so hard the plates rattled. "How dare you?" he roared. "Do you dare suggest that I, Kwaku Mensa, son of Ajay Mensa, am less of a man? Do you know who I am? Do you know the bloodline I come from? Men in my family have fathered children without struggle, and you," he pointed a trembling finger at her, "you dare place the blame on me?" Her lips trembled. "I did not mean—" "Silence!" he barked, his voice echoing through the apartment. "You are the barren one. You have brought me nothing but shame. Never speak of this again." Amina swallowed her tears, lowering her gaze to the floor. That night, she cried herself to sleep, the pillow soaked beneath her cheek. In her heart, she knew something had shifted forever. The next morning, Kwaku would barely look at her. His pride, wounded by her suggestion, had turned into a wall she could not climb. Within weeks, his decision was made. When the divorce papers came, Amina stared at them as though they were written in fire. Her hands trembled as she read the words that ended her marriage. "This is for the best," Kwaku said coldly, adjusting the cufflinks on his expensive suit. I cannot waste my life on a woman who cannot give me an heir. Amina's voice cracked. So easily. After all these years, his lips curled into a smirk. Easily? You gave me nothing. Nothing but disappointment. I will find a real woman. And just like that, she was cast aside. She left his house with nothing but a small suitcase and her dignity. Neighbors whispered as she passed by. The barren one. The wife who failed. Their words clung to her like dust she could not brush away. Yet deep inside, she told herself one thing. This is not the end of my story. The rise of Amina. When the divorce ended, Amina's life fell into pieces. At first, she hid in her parents' small house, spending her days lying on a thin mat, her eyes swollen from weeping. But sorrow does not feed a body, nor does shame keep the lights on. One morning, her mother sat at her bedside and spoke firmly. Amina, my daughter, life does not end because a man walks away. You must rise, work, find your strength. So Amina did. She found a job as a waitress in a modest restaurant in the city, serving spicy jollof rice, grilled tilapia, suya skewers, and bowls of steaming agusi soup to customers who came in hungry and left satisfied. She wore a simple apron and carried trays heavier than she was used to, but for the first time in years, she felt the stirrings of independence. It was there, in the warm clatter of cutlery and the hiss of frying oil, that she met David. David was not a man of riches. He was a waiter, just like her, polite, hardworking, with a smile that could ease the most difficult customers. His laughter was soft, and after the last table had been cleared, Amina found him sitting alone, his chin resting on his hand. She hesitated before asking, "Why do you look so heavy-hearted, David?" He sighed. "Because once, I had a wife. She left me, for someone wealthier. She said love cannot fill a man's pockets." Amina's chest tightened. She sat across from him. For the first time, she shared her own story. The years of barrenness, the accusations, the divorce. By the time she finished, David's eyes were glistening. "You are not barren, Amina," he said firmly. "You are simply wounded. And wounds, they heal." From that night on, they became each other's comfort. Their friendship grew slowly, tenderly. They shared meals during breaks, laughed over silly mistakes at work, and spoke long into the night about their dreams. Where Kwaku had given her scorn, David gave her gentleness. Where Kwaku had wounded her pride, David mended it with words of hope. Months passed, and one day, beneath the shade of the same baobab tree where Amina had once wept with Mariam, David asked quietly, "Amina, will you walk through life with me?" Not as two broken souls, but as one whole. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she whispered, "Yes." Their wedding was small, just family, close friends, and laughter. No gold-trimmed invitations, no grand hotels, but every smile was genuine, and every prayer sincere. Together, they worked hard. They saved every coin, every tip from the restaurant, until one day, they took a leap of faith. They opened a small food stall of their own. They sold smoky jollof rice, pepper soup, kelawele, fried plantains spiced with ginger and chili, and puff-puff that melted in the mouth. Customers came, drawn by the taste and the warmth of their service. What began as a single stall became two. Two became five. Within 3 years, Amina and David's kitchen had grown into a chain of restaurants across the city. Newspapers wrote about them. The couple who turned sorrow into success. They drove cars they once only dreamed of, lived in a house big enough to echo with laughter, and never forgot to bow their heads in gratitude before every meal. For those 3 years, they focused on building their empire. Children were a dream they tucked away for later, promising each other, "When the time is right, we will try." And then, when the time finally came, a miracle unfolded. Amina felt the first signs of life within her. Morning sickness, cravings, the flutter of something tiny in her belly. At first, she did not believe it. Tears blurred her vision as the doctor confirmed the news. She was pregnant. When she told David, he lifted her off her feet, spinning her around as laughter and tears mingled on their faces. "We are going to be parents, Amina," he cried. "The gods have remembered us." Pregnancy was not easy, but it was filled with joy. Every kick, every turn of the tiny life inside her made her glow. She wore her belly with pride, walking through markets and restaurants with her head high. 9 months later, on a rainy evening, she gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. The moment she held them, Amina wept uncontrollably. "David," she whispered, kissing their tiny foreheads. "The world called me barren. They mocked me. But look at our blessings." David's eyes shone as he touched his children gently. "No one can call you barren now. You are a mother, a queen." Their home was filled with laughter, the kind Amina had once only dreamed of. The twins grew strong, surrounded by love, wealth, and joy. Every day, Amina gave thanks that life had led her through the fire, only to bring her to the light. But while Amina's life blossomed, far away, Kweku's story took a different turn. He had continued to climb the ladder of wealth, draped in luxury, surrounded by flatterers. Now, he was ready to marry again. This time, he chose a woman who was already pregnant. To him, it was proof, once more, of his pride, that he could father children, that he was not the problem. The wedding was planned to be grander than the last. Expensive suits, celebrity musicians, champagne flowing like rivers. Invitations were sent out with gold seals, and among those invited was Amina, the same woman he had once thrown away. But this time, when Amina received the invitation, she did not weep. She smiled. She looked at her twins playing on the carpet and whispered, "Now the world will see." The sun glared down on the grand estate where the wedding of the year was about to take place. The venue, a lavish hotel ballroom in Accra, was transformed into something that looked as though royalty had ordered it. Golden drapes hung from the walls, chandeliers glimmered above, and floral arrangements worth thousands of dollars lined every corner. The scent of roses mixed with expensive perfume floated in the air. Outside, luxury cars kept arriving, one after the other. Range Rovers, G-Wagons, Bentleys. Guests stepped out dressed in glittering African attire, bold kente fabrics, and sparkling gowns. Everyone whispered the same thing. "This is the wedding of Kweku Mensah, the wealthy businessman." Kweku stood at the altar, his tall frame wrapped in a pristine white agbada, embroidered with gold threads. His wrists gleamed with Rolex watches. His shoes shone like mirrors. At his side was his bride, Akosua, radiant in a crystal-studded white gown flown in from Paris. A diamond necklace clung to her neck, catching every ray of light. She was already showing a small baby bump, which filled Kweku with arrogant pride. But despite the music, the dancing, and the praises of the guests, Kweku's mind was fixed on one thing, waiting for her. His lips curled into a smirk. Let Amina come and see what she missed. Let her see that I, Kweku, have an heir. Let her feel the sting of humiliation she deserves. Minutes ticked by. Guests were seated, the band played softer, and murmurs filled the hall. Kweku kept glancing at the door. And then, a deep rumble echoed outside. Heads turned as the roar of a luxury engine filled the driveway. Guests rushed to the windows. A sleek, black Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon AMG pulled up, its body gleaming like polished obsidian under the afternoon sun. Gasps rose among the crowd. "Whose car is that?" one elder asked. "It must be one of Kweku's rich friends," another replied. The driver stepped out and quickly moved to the back door. Slowly, the door opened. Amina emerged. She was dressed in a flowing emerald green gown with golden embroidery, her hair swept back elegantly. On her ears sparkled earrings shaped like the African sun. But what stunned the crowd wasn't her beauty. It was the sight of the two toddlers she carried in her arms. A boy and a girl, identical in their almond eyes and curly hair, both dressed in little white attires. They clung to her shoulders, innocent yet regal, as if they knew they were walking into history. Gasps rippled through the hall. Twins? Are those her children? But Kweku said she was barren. Kweku's eyes widened, his mouth falling open. His proud posture crumbled for a moment. Amina walked with confidence, her heels clicking on the marble floor, her lips curved in a small but powerful smile. Every step was deliberate, her back straight, her eyes locked on Kweku. The twins giggled softly, unaware of the storm they had just unleashed. When she reached the altar, she stopped, looked straight into Kweku's eyes and said in a calm but cutting voice, "Congratulations, Kweku." The hall went silent. Kweku swallowed hard. His voice trembled with disbelief. Whose babies are these, Amina?" She tilted her head slightly, rocking her daughter in her arm. "They are mine, Kweku. My children." His face drained of color. You? You have children?" "Yes," she said proudly. "Twins, a boy and a girl. The Lord remembered me, and now the world will never call me barren again." The whispers grew louder, bouncing off the golden walls. Kweku's bride, Akosua, shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between her groom and the radiant woman standing before them. Kweku's voice cracked with anger. "Who is the father?" From the side of the hall, a man stepped forward. He was tall, with broad shoulders, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit. His presence commanded respect. He walked calmly to Amina's side and placed his arm around her. "David Kwame Mensah," he introduced himself, his voice steady. "Her husband." Gasps again. People murmured. "Husband? She remarried? And David, the owner of Kwame's kitchen food chains?" Kweku staggered back as if slapped. You married him?" he stuttered. "Yes," Amina replied, her voice strong. "After you divorced me, after you called me barren, after you threw me away like I was worthless, I found love again. I found a man who respects me, who built a life with me, and who never doubted me." David looked at Akosua, the bride, and suddenly recognition flashed in his eyes. He whispered her name, Efua. Akosua froze. The hall gasped again. Kweku's brows knitted. "Wait, you know her?" David clenched his jaw. "Yes, she is my ex-wife, the woman who betrayed me, who left me to chase rich men." The crowd erupted into shocked chatter. Akosua's face turned pale. Kweku turned on her, fury boiling in his veins. "You lied to me," he shouted. "You told me you were never married." Tears welled in Akosua's eyes. "Kweku, I... But before she could finish, Amina stepped forward, her eyes blazing. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded envelope. She flung it onto Kweku's chest. It fell into his trembling hands. "Read it," she commanded. He opened it. His eyes scanned the words. His face twisted with horror. It was a fertility test. His name was printed clearly on the top. The results were bold and undeniable. "Infertile." "No," he whispered, his knees buckling. This can't be." Amina's voice rang through the hall like thunder. "I got those results yesterday by mistake. The nurse thought I was still your wife and handed them to me. Kweku, you were the problem, not me. You called me barren, you shamed me, you broke me down in front of everyone. Yet here I stand, with 2 beautiful children and a husband who loves me. The shame is not mine, it is yours." The hall burst into murmurs. Some guests shook their heads, others laughed bitterly. Kweku lied all these years? So he was the infertile one? Kweku dropped the papers, his face buried in his palms. Laughter echoed around him. Amina raised her chin high, tears glistening in her eyes, but her voice steady. "To every woman here, remember this. Your worth is not measured by a man's opinion. Your destiny is not defined by his arrogance." I was called Baron, but today I am called Mother, and I will never again let anyone decide my value." The hall erupted in applause. Women ululated, men nodded in respect. Amina turned, holding her twins close, and walked out with David beside her. The G-Wagon door closed, the engine roared, and the car disappeared into the distance. Inside the hall, Kweku stood broken, mocked by the very guests he invited to witness his triumph. And thus, the hunter who set out to humiliate another became the hunted, devoured by his own pride.